Sean Defoe, currently 7 degrees in Knockanore. What's the temperature like in Monaghan?
Oh, bitter cold.
Bitter.
North.
Tell us about your Waterford connections.
Oh, from Waterford, reared in Waterford, worked out in the broadcast centre with all your lovely colleagues there for a while, so hopefully well up on Waterford.
And we'll talk about the national scene at present. The John Halligan decision, the John Halligan announcement. You are the political correspondent with News Talk. Thanks for joining us this morning, Sean. What's your reading about John deciding not to go ahead?
Yeah, well, obviously it had been something that we had expected for a while. We knew that John Halligan was considering his political future and that may not have run. I know he did wrestle with the decision. He did go backwards and forwards quite a lot because his job was something he was very passionate about being a TD for Waterford, being a minister in the last few years. He's obviously represented Waterford at various local and national levels for over 30 years and has made the decision to step aside, as he said himself, start a new chapter, devote more time to his family, wife, children, grandchildren, which for any TD, but particularly one who has to travel up to Dublin for a couple of days a week, and particularly one who's a minister, is obviously a difficult thing to balance. So It does open up. I mean, Waterford is such an open constituency. You've got two TDs rather who are no longer running, and Paudie Coffey out of the picture as well in this general election. So it really does make for what could be a very fresh slate coming into the 33rd Dáil.
Yeah, it throws it wide open. We were just saying that we had a panel discussion here last Friday. John Deise and the Deise name not being on a ticket for so many years, up to 40, 50 years in Waterford, that's now not there. Then we've got Paudie Coffey and his experience from 1999. He's not there. We've got John Halligan now, who's been involved in local politics since the age of 17. He's now in his mid-60s. So 5 decades of political activity. Now, there is a chance that his brother Brendan might run, but it throws the race wide open, and we have a strong, potentially Green candidate here. Labour Party will be fancying their chances. Fianna Fáil might say they might get two. Obviously, Damien Gagan. There's so many things happening. Matt Shanahan, Bernadette Phillips, Independents. It's kind of very indicative of what's happening in other counties and constituencies as well, isn't it?
It is. It's a fascinating constituency. It does kind of sum up where the general election is as well, because you have so many competing things. You've gone through them quite well there, and you would think, David Culman would have been seen as a safe seat before the local elections, and then it was poor results across the country for Sinn Féin as well, even though you'd say he probably is relatively safe. There's probably a Fianna Fáil seat and probably a Fine Gael seat. People can argue back and forward over who they think they are, and then one more with John Halligan stepping out now opens the door for Labour, the Greens and Independent. There's so much going on, and it could actually end up being a bellwether constituency for the country, because Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil will obviously be trying to get not just one but two, and if one of them can, it may be indicative of the national trend that is coming around the place. So there's a huge amount to play for in the coming week.
Yeah, and David Cullinan would argue quite strongly that the Sinn Féin vote held up in the Waterford constituency compared to other constituencies because of the work that was done locally within the constituency. Sean, I know we're just into the first full day of campaigning. I really appreciate you talking to us this morning. I was listening to you on News Talk over the last 24 hours. Do you think this is going to be a nasty campaign? Every campaign in its own way has turns and twists and can be called nasty, but how do you think this campaign is going to turn out?
It's going to be a really interesting one, because it potentially has it could be the first presidential style one we've seen, in that there are two very clear candidates for Taoiseach in Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin. We're going to see them debate one-on-one more than likely, and that could get quite heated. The two men don't have any great love for each other. They don't have any great love for each other's policies either, and they're both very, very capable and clever debaters. And that then trickles down as well, because as much as we talk about the national trends, it does locally become about particular personalities. And I think from a Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil point of view, they are absolutely sick of each other. They are sick of looking at each other, sick of the confidence supply arrangement that was there, particularly Fianna Fáil TDs who have taken it over the head by saying, well, you're just propping them up anyway, you're no different from the government for the last 3 years. And then a lot of people are looking for an alternative. We often forget, I think, how much voting demographics changed in the last 30 years, when Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil between them would have 80% of the vote. This time, it might not even be 50% of the vote. 1 in 2 voters is going to vote for another party. Does that throw up something whereby maybe a coalition of the left can be thrown together? I don't know. I think probably not yet. But if it does put a lot of power into hands of people like the Labour Party and the Greens when they do get into government formation talks, And I think a lot of people are looking for an alternative to the main two parties. So it could get very, very personal. It could get very party politically personal in people bashing each other over the head. But at the end of the day, they are all going to have to do business with each other because no one's going to get a majority here.
No one's going to get a majority here. I know it's very difficult to call it at this stage. Do you think it's going to be a battle between Leo and Martin? Like the personalities will come into it as well as the issues?
I think it's been interesting. The issues are obviously going to be around housing, health, transport, cost of living. They're going to be probably the big issues. I do think it is going to be Leo Varadkar versus Micheál Martin. But if we're reading into the Fine Gael start to the election, the way they're going about it is they're not allowing it to become that yet. They see Micheál Martin as Fianna Fáil's trump card. He's their strongest media performer, and they think that the rest of the Fianna Fáil front bench is a little bit weak. So you've seen Simon Harris being like an attack dog over the last 2 days, going after Micheál Martin rather than talking about his own situation in health. You're going to see other ministers, I think, doing that, and they're all going to try and make it about Fianna Fáil is Micheál Martin alone. Micheál Martin was there when everything went wrong with the government in the early noughties, and he can't be trusted. That is going to be their campaign. Fianna Fáil are going to try and make it about housing and health. They look at, you can't talk about a strong front bench when you've got Simon Harris and Owen Murphy there doing a terrible job. So in that sense, I think you're right. We're going to get into some really party personal and politically personal comments. It's going to be fascinating to watch which side can get on top. And a lot of this is going to be done on the airwaves because of the time that it is. It's mid-January, dark evenings, people are at home. They don't necessarily want to be answering the door to some politician promising them the moon and stars when they just want to be in by the fire, maybe watching Dermot Bannon or Strictly Come Dancing or Love Island, in fact. Don't underestimate the Love Island impact on the connection among younger voters. So it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Listen, thank you so much, Sean Defoe. We'll talk to you hopefully over the next week, and mind yourself on the road and make sure to eat loads of fruit. That's very important when you're on the road.
I'm hoping not to put on the election stone after the Christmas stone that I already put on hanging around there. But hopefully not.
Loads of fruit. Listen, Sean Defoe, News Talk correspondent, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Damien.
See you later. Damien, I'm John Halligan's brother, Ray. On the Facebook page yesterday, where you mentioned that John wouldn't be running in the upcoming general election, some of the comments were nothing short of disgraceful, vile and abusive and shameful. And these comments are on your page. I've taken down a lot of the comments without any condemnation for yourself. I have, as I said, taken down some of the comments. And a broadcaster, you have responsibility not to allow such abuse to remain on your page. So we might give you a shout on that, Ray. I agree. There's no point in it's horrible to put vile and abusive comments up on Facebook pages, and the keyboard warriors that are out there, they shouldn't be doing it. It's simple as that. When you're reporting on Facebook, on Twitter and social media, you report the news, and we do try to take out any comments that are there afterwards. Ray, we'll come back to you on that. Thank you very much. I know you said you'd gladly discuss the issue, and thank you very much. Now, councillors are required under local government legislation to attend 80% of scheduled meetings. That's council meetings or committees they're on, or events that are organised, official events by the council. If they drop below that threshold, they'll be docked a percentage of their wages the following year, or if they have to pay back maybe a certain percentage. Yesterday morning, we had Councillor Matt Shanahan on the programme. He announced that he was going to be running in the general election as an independent candidate. And I asked him about his attendance at council meetings. And this is what he had to say on this matter.
People who say that Matt hasn't been seen. I've been at every council meeting that's been there. People are welcome to come into the public galleries and look at me and watch me in performing. Beyond that, I have been out doing hand on heart work throughout all of last year, quite a lot of it. I have wide-ranging support from all of the independent councillors on Waterford City and County Council.
You said you've been at every council meeting.
Yes, I've been at every. I don't think I've missed a plenary meeting yet, other than the first one, and I haven't missed any.
You sure on that now?
Well, I'm pretty certain. Yeah, but look, if I may have missed one, I certainly haven't missed more than one.
Because I was doing a bit of research into this, and my figures show that potentially you've missed more than anybody else since the council.
That's completely wrong, Dave.
That's wrong, is it?
That's completely wrong.
Okay.
Absolutely wrong. Where did you get the figures?
I was talking to somebody within the council.
Well, that's absolutely couldn't be the case, Damien.
So you've been at every meeting?
As far as I know, and I'm quite happy to go back to a diary, but Damien, I do my best to attend every council meeting. I can't remember the number of times I've given apologies. It might have been once. I wasn't there for the meeting in June of last year because I was due to be away, and other than that, I have tried to be at every meeting.
OK, tried to be at every meeting, as Matt Shanahan then said, as said in the piece, at every council meeting, and then changed and said maybe not more than one did he miss. So after the programme yesterday, Councillor Shanahan got in touch with the Corporate Affairs section of the council, who told him what the situation is. Councillor Shanahan phoned me yesterday afternoon looking for a retraction about the attendance at meetings. I said no problem if what I said was wrong. Remember, he said he'd only missed one meeting. He emailed the newsroom in WLR and the following email from Corporate Affairs. This actually shows that he missed 6 meetings. So here's the email. Matt, the record for your attendance is as follows. Plenary, attended 17 of 19 meetings. He didn't attend on the 7th of June, AGM, and special meeting held on the 24th of July in relation to Ciarán O'Rian. I've amended your attendance at the Freedom Ceremony. You hadn't signed in, so that's why it wasn't recorded. The Metro meeting, you attended 8 out of 10 meetings. The Economic Strategy Policy Committee did not attend the one meeting held, and the JPC meeting didn't attend the one meeting on the 11th of March. So the email ends, you have attended 25 of the 31 meetings scheduled, which accounts for 80.65% attendance, so you are in compliance. So he's missed 6 meetings, but he is in compliance. That's the email. Remember, compliance means being over 80% threshold. He's at 80.65%. So I was talking to Councillor Shanahan this morning. He confirmed to me that this time yesterday, when I spoke to him, the council had him recorded as not having been at the Freedom Ceremony, which was giving the freedom to Dan Mulhall, Freedom of Waterford. So this time yesterday, his attendance was recorded as being worse than 80%. After telling them he was at it, but hadn't been signed in, they changed the record to show that he was there. But as of yesterday morning, when I raised the matter, technically he wasn't in compliance, which he agreed with me this morning. So the council had it wrong. He was at that meeting, the Freedom Ceremony. He also told me this morning that when he was co-opted onto the council, he didn't know that he had been put on the Joint Policing Committee, hence his non-attendance at that meeting. So the fact of the matter is that Councillor Shanahan said yesterday he only missed one meeting. He's actually missed 6. So he went on Facebook last night demanding an apology. I expect an unqualified apology from Deise today, WLR FM in the morning, for querying my attendance record at council meetings. Well, there won't be an apology from me. In fact, the person who should be apologising is Matt Shanahan, to myself and to Deise today. We deal with facts, and the statement from the council fully vindicates my questions yesterday. Yes, Matt is in compliance. He's over the 80%. Compliance was not mentioned on the show or the programme yesterday. What was mentioned, that Matt Shanahan said he didn't miss more than one meeting. The facts show that he missed 6. Now, our text number, as you know, 083 3333 975. You can call Deise today at 051 846 123. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. A message into WhatsApp. The national media is mostly framing the election in terms of 2 conservative mainstream parties. This election has others who argue another Ireland is possible. And that is from a People Before Profit candidate. Damien, well said on your piece earlier. Damien, can you give an update on electoral registration deadlines, or is it too late? It's not too late to give an update. My understanding is there's a special electoral register being compiled at present, and I believe it would be next Wednesday. We're checking that this morning and we'll come back to you. We may have something on that tomorrow or on Friday. Any texts that come in, we will make sure over the course of the election that we balance them out as is required under broadcasting legislation. We are going to be talking, hopefully, to John Halligan probably tomorrow, an in-depth interview about, I suppose, the reasons why he is stepping down, the abuse that politicians receive. As his brother Ray has said, they're disgraceful abuse online in different respects. The personal circumstances regarding his poor wife Elaine, who has been very unwell with major back problems. And I know John Halligan is visiting her in hospital today, and I want to wish her and him the very, very best. And I want to wish Elaine a good recovery on that. We'll be talking hopefully to Minister Halligan tomorrow at some stage. Firstly, this horrible, gruesome, horrendous killing, the type of killing that's often seen among international gangs, says former Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey, who is based in Dublin. Alan Bailey, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Human remains have been discovered in a burnt-out car in Drumcondra. Gardaí believe the discovery is linked to the disappearance of a 17-year-old boy in County Louth on Sunday night. And then we had these 2 arms and 2 legs found in the residential area of Coolock on Monday night. Alan, you were a former Garda Detective Sergeant, former head of the Garda Cold Case Unit. What's this all about? This is horrible, isn't it?
It's horrible. It's frightening, and it's a depravity that I've never seen in all my service in the Gardaí. It's one of these messages that are being sent out, and it's unthinkable. You know, it's like some of these Mexican cartel gangs, the way they dismember the bodies and leave body parts for the relations to find.
Yeah, it's like somebody's been watching a Goodfellas movie or one of these mafia type movies. It's just horrendous. Like a 17-year-old boy. Like, imagine his family today.
Yeah, and on top of losing the child to think that this has been done. You know, and it's a game that's been played by drug gangs, one trying to outdo the other. You know, we'll stop at nothing sort of thing.
And if the poor chap, whatever he was into, we don't know, but if he was killed and dismembered in that way, it's more than likely he was tortured in some way beforehand.
No doubt about that. It's quite a difficult job to dismember a body even of itself, and to set out and do something like that, it shows a mindset I think it's frightening, to be honest.
Yeah, because without getting into it, you'd need very specific cutting equipment, and
you would, and it's not something that would be done easily, you know.
Yeah,
and then it's even think of doing it. You know, you upset yourself just thinking of it being done, let alone having to actually do it.
The Guards have made a lot of efforts over the last number of years in quelling the Kinahan-Hutch feud in around the city centre, and the pockets. We were talking to Michael O'Toole from the Star yesterday. There's pockets of I suppose areas where drug gangs are flourishing in Coolock and different areas, isn't there?
That's it, yeah. And these are the up and coming gangs now. You know, these are the gangs that are fixed and muscles that were afraid to show up to this when you had a big gang in charge. But now we're all jockeying for position and for power and for patches.
They're filling the space, and they're pushing further out into the suburbs and out to Louth. And we know about the feuding and the drug situation that's been happening up around County Louth as well in the last 2 years.
Yeah. It was a city-only problem for many years, but it's not now at this stage. You know.
Are the Gardaí resourced enough to deal with this type of thing, or will it need maybe a reinvigoration, do you think, Alan?
I think reinvigoration might be the word. You know, you can get very kind of blasé and you can get kind of very into a rut when it comes to these gangland murders, but this is bringing it to a whole new level. I think that it'll have to be taken on. There's a good man up in Louth, like Christy Mangan, the chief up there. I work with him and he'll leave no stone unturned, and it's to give the likes of him his head now to let him at this, you know.
Yeah, and the other problem is that a lot of Garda information and cases comes from the community, and if the community are being terrorised by gangs like this, then that information may not be forthcoming.
It may not be forthcoming, and you have an incident last week that's allegedly linked to a drug deal here, or a drug debt, with an attempt to abduct a person here in the city. There's some suggestion that might be linked to a drug debt, and that's another frightening development. In
Dublin, yeah. And then also, if Gardaí are successful in some particular geographical area, the gangs will move to other counties further outside of Dublin, isn't that it?
That's it, exactly, yeah. So as I say, it's not just a city-wide problem anymore, it's absolutely a nationwide problem, and it has to be tackled on that basis.
As you say, in your experience, you've covered many, many cases over the years. This is one of the worst, if not the worst, you think?
I do believe so. As I say, it's a level of depravity that I have never witnessed in 40 years in the police. You know, and it's a frightening thought to think. To think that someone would do this to a young child just to teach someone as a lesson or to mark someone else's card for them.
It's not good at all.
Not good, no.
Alan, it's good to talk to you. Mind yourself, and thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Okay, Damien, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan, and mind yourself. And that's a really, really horrible, horrible situation up there. Damien, I came across an article in the Journal a few days before Christmas on a website stating that due to ill health, Michael Fingleton will no longer have to be answerable for all the wrongdoings due to ill health. Is there a special law, Damien, for certain people? I don't know. I don't think so. I think there was specific reasons regarding the dropping of that case. There were a lot of queries raised and a lot of people said this should go to court or should be a follow-on through from it. So we haven't heard, maybe not the end of it yet. There could well be an appeal on that. Damien, the update on the electoral registers. We got a WhatsApp in from a person who texts a number of times. Daniel, thanks very much for sending it in, Daniel. If anybody has any queries regarding the electoral register, ring the council. That's the first thing you can do. But check the register.ie. So go on your computer and you basically type in check the register, all one word, check the register.ie. And on that there's a public page form, and one of the forms is called the RFA2 form. The RFA2 form. Now, they have these forms in the council chambers, both in Dungarvan and in Waterford. So the RF2 form for supplementary register, and that has to be in, as far as we understand, either posted to the council before Wednesday or handed into them before next Wednesday. So not sure what time it closes on Wednesday. It may well be close of business, which would be 5 o'clock. But you have until next Wednesday to fill out that form, send it in. There may be a facility for emailing it in. That's if you want to check with the council. We're going to talk to somebody within the council about that. Somebody from the council as well checked with them this morning about the worst attendance councillors in the council, and they said they come back to us next week about that. They're just compiling the figures at present. Some other texts coming in. Damien, the government decided not to give the old age pensioners €5 this year. If Fianna Fáil get in, will they give that in March? If Fianna Fáil form the next government, will they give it in March? My understanding is that any laws that were enacted before the dissolution of the government continue, unless there is a supplementary act which reverses them. So any laws that were brought in before yesterday, before Christmas, whenever the case may be, they become part of the law. So if you are due to get an increase in your pension in March, then that will continue unless the government decides to reverse that. And I think any government would be very, very wary at doing something like that. Next, we're going to talk about an issue which has been on the political agenda but hasn't been dealt with fully: the political apathy over gambling addiction. Now, welcome back to the programme. If you want to text or WhatsApp 083 333 975, you can call 051 846 123. You can send an email, Deise today at WLRFM.com. Barry, good morning.
Morning, Damien.
Thanks very much for joining us, Barry Grant. You are a Waterford city-based councillor, not a county councillor or a city councillor, a councillor who helps people. You're seeing almost 3 times as many clients on a per capita basis in relation to problem gambling than the HSE is across the rest of the country. Dermot has this report in the News and Star this week. Startling figures, Barry. Talk to me about it, please.
Yeah, I mean, we since July of last year, we're financially finally in a position where we could offer a free counselling service. It's myself and my colleague Tony O'Reilly, who I think you've spoken to in the past, is the author of a book called Tony 10.
Yes. And
has his own lived experience of gambling addiction. He's qualified as an addiction counsellor too. So both of us happen to live in Waterford, so obviously that was one of the places that we were going to offer the service, and then the other one being the other obvious one being Dublin, where you have roughly half the population living in that kind of broader catchment area. And we basically have done little or nothing to promote it, because almost from day one we were at full capacity. We are in a situation where I think right now we have about 24 people on a waiting list in Dublin. In the Dublin one, we'd have people coming from neighbouring counties like Wicklow, Kildare and Meath as well. But here in Waterford, we're nearly at maximum capacity as well, and we would have people coming in here also from neighbouring counties, Kilkenny, Wexford, South Tip, even as far as Carlow in some cases.
Wow. And it's called, the clinic is called the Gambling Clinic, as you say. Were you surprised? Are you surprised at the numbers?
I'm not surprised because from day one, say the first 3.5 years of the service, I'd always operated a helpline service, and I knew from speaking to people on the helpline that there was a huge demand all across the country. Like, we get calls and emails from people all the way from Donegal down to Cork and everywhere in between, whether they be family members or people with gambling problems themselves, who are crying out for services. Now, fortunately, you have the likes of Gamblers Anonymous, who would have a huge geographical spread around the country, and quite often people can get the help that they need there. In some cases, people would need additional support, say, in the form of the type of one-to-one counselling that we would provide. And we believe that there's a huge need for that type of service throughout the country.
My brother is a counsellor, a trained counsellor in addiction, and obviously dealing with certain types of addiction. Gambling comes under the ambit of that, but there are very specific treatments for gamblers that may not apply with other addictions. Is there enough being done? Is this being seen as a public health issue? You mentioned in Dermot Keyes' article that the main reasons, I suspect, are simply down to money, and basically there's never been a significant proportional campaign when it comes to gambling in Ireland in terms of it being a public health issue. Is gambling a public health issue?
Absolutely, 100%. So we've seen that in our closest neighbour in the UK, where recently the NHS have put substantial resources into developing 14 specialist problem gambling clinics around the UK. Now, previous to that, they only had one clinic in London, and that was it for the entire country. So we've seen it in other jurisdictions where they've acknowledged that it is a public health issue. They put resources into trying to prevent harm around the issue, as well as treat people who are already in addiction. We've never seen the government in Ireland tackle gambling addiction or problem gambling in that way, and they've kind of left us to the gambling industry to do the public health messaging around gambling, and that is, I suppose, problematic, or we would see that as being problematic. So we do need to see government investment and government intervention and an acknowledgement, from the government that this is a serious public health issue. I mean, the government's own statistics would say that there are about 30,000 people with gambling problems in Ireland, and then the kind of knock-on effect for family members and other concerned persons, you could multiply that by 10 again.
Yeah.
So it's a substantial issue with no government resources allocated to it.
Let's get away from facts and figures for a minute, Barry, and tell me a story. Tell me about a person or one of the worst cases that comes to mind. Obviously, we're not going to reveal identities, but give me an example of what you are listening to and the problems that are experienced out there.
Well, it can be anything from, let's say, one of the first people I ever worked with in Waterford was a young man, a small child at home, gambling in one of the casinos here in the city. He was signed up to their mailing list, so he was getting a text every dole day being offered a €10 free bet or free spins. He was into playing slot machines, and every dole day would go down, collect this €10 free bet and lose his entire dole. So that's €188, which to some people that might not seem a large amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but if it's everything that you have and you're losing it the day that you get it, that's a severe problem. And then at the other end of the scale, we have individuals who are, when one of the first things we would ask them when we're doing an assessment on the first session is if they have any idea how much money they've lost gambling in their lifetime. Now, everybody hates that question, but it can be anything ranging from the price of a brand new car to the price of a house, like being able to buy a house outright with the money that you've lost over 10, 20 or 30 years. And that's just the financial side of it. I mean, the impact that it has on relationships, that it has on mental health, a huge number of the people that come to us would have had suicidal thoughts in recent times. Some would have attempted suicide. Gambling addiction has the highest rate of suicide of any of the addictions. So it's very wide-ranging. We see people from all walks of life, from very high-paid jobs, to people who might be on social welfare or kind of minimum wage jobs. We're seeing more and more women coming forward, which is unusual. We're definitely seeing more women who will be becoming addicted to playing online slots at home, and we're delighted to see more women coming forward. But I suppose in some respects it's kind of a worrying trend as well.
I was watching the BBC News last night. They're talking about banning credit cards regarding gambling in placing bets online. Like 33%, a third of all gambling now is done online. It's taking gambling out of the main street beside the pubs and bringing it into the houses and into the kitchens. And would the banning of credit cards here help?
It certainly will be a step in the right direction. I mean, people get into serious, severe financial difficulty, which also has a knock-on effect on their family members and dependents, just gambling with the money that they have, right? Their own money on their debit card or that's in their bank account or the cash in their pockets, right? People get into serious, serious trouble just doing that. But then imagine borrowing money to gamble as well. And one of the key factors in any gambling problem is chasing your losses. So if you're borrowing money, like on a credit card, which is one of the easiest ways of accessing credit or borrowing money, and you've racked up that debt, and many of the people that we work with would max out a credit card on day one of getting that credit card and will take out multiple credit cards and max them out before they run out of options for getting credit. Now you're also chasing those losses, trying to pay off the interest on the credit cards, maybe trying to hide the fact that you've taken out the credit cards from family members. So gambling with borrowed money is a really, really terrible idea. I mean, if I walked into a bookie shop in Waterford today and asked them if they would allow me to put £1,000 on a horse on credit, I'd be laughed out the door, right? But banks will allow people to gamble with credit on their credit cards, right? And we've seen in the UK, many of the banks have actually put in a function where you can, when you get your credit card, you can tell them block all gambling transactions on it straight away, or within your online banking app, you can turn off gambling transactions as well. So I think the banks could start doing something about that in Ireland. It's
just madness, the idea that, as you say, gambling on credit cards. And the another thing is the online gambling and gambling advertising on television. The rules in the UK, says Tony in Ballymac, have been changed disastrously some years ago. And then you have, obviously, this plethora of football clubs that have gambling as their main sponsor. So it's insidious. There's ways of getting around the rules and regulations if gambling companies see fit, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think half of the Premier League teams are sponsors or have shirt sponsors who are gambling companies. I think it's 17 of the 24 championship clubs. Like, it's absolutely huge. And there was an interesting study they did in the UK last year, the year before, when they looked at a random episode of Match of the Day, which is shown on BBC, which is a channel which has never had any form of advertising. And in this kind of random episode of Match of the Day that they looked at, a person would see hundreds of gambling advertisements within that single episode of Match of the Day where there are no ads, right? Because it's on the players' shirts, it's on the hoardings around the side of the pitch. Some of the stadiums are actually named after gambling companies. It's extremely insidious, and it's been stitched into all these healthy activities like sport, to make that kind of positive association between something which can be highly addictive to some people and can be very harmful to some people, and then you associate it with something very healthy that the kids especially are attracted to, like soccer, for example.
Yeah, I was talking to a man just last week about this, Barry. He's a reformed gambler, a gambling addict, and he's stayed away from it for so long, and then you can hit a low. Certain things can happen in your life and you can just go back on the gambling, and then you realise you shouldn't be doing it. But that addiction, it's horrendous. Is it the worst form of addiction, do you think?
it's difficult to say that. I mean, I don't like to think of it in terms of hierarchies.
No, it's wrong.
It's notoriously difficult to treat. But I mean, I suppose in the past I've worked with people who are addicted to heroin or on the methadone program, and that's also extremely difficult. You know, we look around the country, Waterford, South Kilkenny, all around the cities and small villages in Ireland are awash with cocaine at the moment. That can be quite tricky to come off as well. So I suppose because it's a behavioural addiction, it has more parallels with something like an eating disorder, because if you stop using cocaine or you stop using heroin or alcohol, you just don't have those things in your life anymore. But if you stop gambling, you have to have access to money, in the same way that if you have an eating disorder, you still have to eat food, right? So it's that very deeply ingrained behavioural addiction does make it more complex, but it's important for anybody who's listening to note that people can get into good recovery from a gambling problem, that it is treatable. Obviously, you gave the example of somebody who had relapse there after a period of time. That can happen as well. But even if a person relapses, they can get back into good recovery after that relapse.
Yeah, some people commented on soccer clubs, football clubs here in Ireland. Waterford had it as well. Like it's all over the place. Anyone with suicidal thoughts or issues this morning, Pieta House have just texted in to say 051 858 510 and get online to the gambling clinic. As you say, there's a waiting list, Barry, at the present, isn't there?
Not for Waterford. We do have availability in Waterford. So anybody listening or anybody who might be tuned in from neighbouring counties, please do get in contact. If you go to thegamblingclinic.ie, all of the details are there. It's a completely free service. We'll see you as quickly as possible.
Barry, thank you very much, Barry Grant. Thanks for joining us, and continued success in your work. And I know you're making the difference in a lot of people's lives, and I hope that continues. Thanks, Barry.
Thanks a million, Damien.
Say hello to Tony for us, won't you? Thank you.
I will indeed.
Barry Grant there talking about that. It's true, Damien, what you say. You can only drink so much, but you can gamble everything. It is one of the worst addictions. Again, we're not talking about hierarchy, but it is horrendous what gambling can do. Anybody with issues, gamblingclinic.ie or Pieta House 051 858 510. Also the HSE has gambling helplines for people as well. Now, if you have a PC at home, a personal computer, do you know what Microsoft system is being used on it? Most computers are run by Microsoft. Is it a thing called Microsoft 7? If it is, on any PC, any relation that you have that's working on a PC, this is a very important piece for you. I'm going to talk now to Graham Mulhern. Graham, good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
Thank you very much for joining us. Graham, founder and CEO of internet security firm Be Secure Online. PC users running Windows 7. Talk to me about this, please.
Popular, but not extremely popular operating system. Not Windows 98 by any means, but the big news is Microsoft officially have stopped supporting it today, and that means people need to think seriously on, do they continue on using it? One of the big issues is that so many businesses never grew to love any of the subsequent operating systems, so they're still continuing to use the Windows 7, like the HSE, the health boards as they used to be, and in the UK it's all over the place. But businesses around the country are really going to be affected because they probably missed this with Christmas and with Brexit and everything else, but they need to make a decision. Do they upgrade or do they decide to stay?
OK, so let's just talk about this. It's a 10-year-old operating system. It was one of the most popular operating systems, nearly as popular as Windows 10. It has a 33% global share. It's thought around a fifth of the PCs, that's personal computers, running on the Windows platform in Ireland use this. And Microsoft has warned over the last 5 years it's going to end support for this product. It's shifting its focus from old technologies, putting resources into newer ones. So that basically means that it's no longer going to support this system. It's not going to get updates. And most importantly, it will make potentially these machines vulnerable to hackers. Is that right?
Absolutely, and couldn't have put it better myself. And one thing, before we go on to maybe business, one thing that it's worth thinking of, and we've a deal up on our site at the moment for people thinking of buying internet security. We are not exaggerating when saying, please back up important documents on all your photographs. Every day of the week we get people writing in or ringing us saying, I've lost my photographs to an attack. Really simple to do something about that. But if you're running Windows 7, don't intend changing or just too busy, think about doing a backup, or if you don't have backup, get a backup. But for God's sake, do something about your family photographs, because many of us have been using cameras and backup to our PCs and have 15 to 20 years worth of photos on our machines.
Okay.
So do a backup.
A backup, again, maybe put them on a memory stick, take them off the computer, do something about them, because the computer's running Windows 7, it's going to remain functional, but won't be completely secure. So what sort of a backup would you suggest would be the simplest and most accessible way of doing it?
Two things. One is buy a USB key and or a stick, and if you go into your local PC store, any of the big electronic stores sell USB keys. 10, 15 quid is nothing to back up a lifetime of memories. Look up online backup. That's the word to look for online. Online backup. There are good services that will automatically back up once a day or once a week or once a month up into the cloud, and just look up online backup options in Google or Facebook and buy something there. But do something. Don't do nothing. Do something. Back up your photographs and big documents.
Okay, and if there's some companies and organisations out there that are still not ready and have kind of forgotten about this, they can actually choose to pay Microsoft. They can extend security updates for the next 3 years. Now, this is sold on a per-device basis. So if you have lots of devices in your organisation, for example, the HSE, 46,000 of its 58,000 PCs are running on Windows 7. Like, there's 58,000 personal computers operating the HSE, 46,000 of them. So they're going to spend $1 million on extended support from Microsoft over the next year alone. Isn't it a bit silly that people didn't see this coming?
You say that, Damien, but I mean, things in the business IT world, other things move more slowly, and they perhaps have other suppliers like patient management systems that precluded them from making a quick step. But the HSE, I mean, that's just a newspaper headline. The Boards of Health and the HSE and the NHS in the UK will have Microsoft reps and dealership arrangements. They'll be getting in touch with Microsoft and doing deals at the corporate level. So I mean, I know it's 145 per person. But the likes of the HSE and the ESB and Telecom Air or whatever they're called now, Air, I forget, they change every week. These sort of people will be able to update their machines directly with the company and do a deal, and that'll be a negotiation, and they'll be paying nothing like 145 per machine. That's just for us dummies out in the real world.
If anybody has any doubts about this, obviously they can go on your website, Be Secure Online. Is there a possibility that hackers are waiting out there to put in viruses to attack Windows 7 users? Yes, and just before we come to that, we've tweeted on to you this morning the link for to buy the download if you want to urgently buy it. We've also tweeted a free link to your station on your own Twitter account there, Damien, and that's where you can actually get the Windows 10 upgrade for free. I don't know how much longer Windows or Microsoft are going to leave that open, but we've tweeted it onto the station this morning, and it's on your Twitter account, and there's a link there, and there's a very good article I think I referenced in the Irish Independent. And people will still be able to. We're doing a public service here, Damien. We're looking after your listeners. They will be, if they look on your Twitter or the station's Twitter account, able to get a download. And there's a very good story in yesterday's Irish Independent on how to do it. Your second point, of course, there are people waiting. But everybody knows that. So everybody will be getting strange emails from tomorrow from Nigerian generals they've never met before, and all sorts of spooks who pretend they know that you've been looking at the internet and that you should be paying them 1,000 Bitcoin tonight. Yes, of course. And also they now know that nobody's protecting those machines. So people are going to get some additional thrills through their email boxes, and there will be attacks on websites, yes. OK, so people be very aware of that. Graham Mulhern, we will watch this story with interest. As ever, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much, sir. You too, thank you. Thanks very much, Graham. And text in, Damien, Microsoft are still allowing you to download the Microsoft 10 home version for free until the end of January, as you just heard with that piece.